Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. I'm your host, Wendy Covey. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, best practice, or challenge in marketing to technical audiences. Along the way, you'll meet friends and colleagues of mine who will share their stories. And my hope is that with each episode, you'll be inspired and ready to take action. Before we get started, I'd like to give a brief shout out to our sponsor, True Marketing. True is a full-service content marketing agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. If you're a listener of Content Marketing Engineered, then most likely your primary persona, the specifier that's going to first bring you into the company, will be an engineer or some sort of other technical professional. But there's another important persona that comes along as part of a buyer's team, and that's the purchasing agent. And I don't know about you, but I didn't know a lot about purchasing agents, having worked with very few of them in my career. And so I was excited today to invite Nate Peo, who spent 15 years of his career as a purchasing agent. And I wanted to get into his head about how this professional operates, what motivates them, and how they're measured. I think you'll learn a lot about how to create content targeted to this persona through this podcast. Let's do this. Well, today I'm joined by Nate Peo, who's the Vice President of Purchasing and the host of the All In podcast. Welcome to the show, Nate.
Good. Welcome. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. We're going to have some fun today. So those of you listening, Nate has spent 15 years or so of his career in purchasing. And I, for one, can't wait to get in his head about what makes this unique profession tick. So listen, Nate, I'm asking you today to speak for your entire profession. Are you ready for this? No pressure.
I completely am. Let's talk about it.
Okay. Well, I invited you here because so the situation is, my listeners have several target audience personas that they have to write content for. And we often talk on this podcast about the engineers and how they're the specifier, the first person to find their solution. But no doubt, and another important influencer and maybe even final decision maker is the purchasing agent. And I don't feel like marketers really understand what makes them tick and what they're all about, what motivates them, how they're measured. So that's what we're going to do today.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Okay. Well, let's start with the buying team. So describe a buying team and what the role might be of the purchasing agent.
So a purchasing agent is usually involved in an organization that has enough purchasing needs that they're going to need full-time staff. Maybe it's one purchasing agent or it's a team of multiple. And what they're usually doing is going out and creating relationships with all the vendors that are supplying materials or products or services to the company. And they're looking for what's out there, what are the pros and cons, knowing who's got the best deals, but they're also there to, I guess, do economies of scale. So if you have multiple projects going on and people that are speccing products are in different spots, and you say, I need 15 widgets here and 20 widgets here and 30 widgets here, instead of it's 3 separate orders, you figure out a way to combine resources and say, hey, we're going to be buying 100 of these things. Is there a better option to do it? And you start talking with the vendors too about, hey, this is our needs today, what are our needs next year and then in the future. And you're keeping aware of product trends and stuff like that, improvements in the market, and constantly looking for alternate sources that solve the same problem or solve it more effectively.
Makes sense. So when I think about economies of scale, some of the people listening might have a product that they're trying to get into a company, but their competitors are already entrenched. And so maybe one design engineer likes product A, but the other divisions of the company are using product B. And I can imagine that's a pretty uphill battle to displace the person that's already there and has this volume discounts or whatever it is.
It really is. And I want to talk a little bit about personalities in purchasing, because you think it's just, hey, it's just a role. You order, you send out your RFPs, you get your prices back, and you select the lowest price provider or the lowest price provider of a qualified bidder. And by qualified, I mean, hey, there's a certain threshold of expectations, specs, qualities, performance, deliverables, and if they qualify for all those things, and you're a little bit indifferent to the manufacturer. But you have to remember, like, the purchasing agent has their own set of bosses or their own set of customers, if you would. So they might be reporting in a structure that's very operations driven, and it's all about time, schedule, getting the product there, doing all this stuff. Or they might be marketing central, which is very, hey, we want it to be the top of the line. We want it to be the flashiest. We want it to be the best. Or it might be very cost driven. And it's like, hey, we're very value centered. We would never pay more than this, that, or this. So think about all those scenarios that are different. If somebody comes in and wants to sell me a product and say, hey, I can give you this product for 10 cents cheaper, but my boss says schedule is all we care about. Do I want to risk my career by saving a little bit of money on an unknown that might not be able to deliver on the schedule until they're proven? Or vice versa, marketing wise, hey, we can get this here all day long. But if you go, hey, you're not up to this level of, I guess, brand identity, think about, like, trying to think of something like I'm thinking of Kohler faucets, or like high end faucets. Like, you can't just switch in just generic faucets because they're cheaper and you can get more of them, because the customer's going to have a higher level of expectation. So if your product is along those lines of brand recognition, the purchasing agent is going to switch it too. So there's a lot of dynamics that go into it. So you have to really understand, what is the organization's priorities? What's the purchasing agent's priorities? Because they're going to be a little bit different. And then there's another thing you want to understand, is a purchasing agent has a variety of backgrounds. Maybe they came from an engineering side, maybe they came from the operations side, but a lot of times they come in, their first job is receptionist or contract admin, and they're just used to getting paper and putting it into a computer, and they really understand the contract process. And then they do really good at their job, so they get promoted to purchasing agent because they're really efficient at writing contracts, negotiating contracts, running the accounting system, making sure bills are paid, but they really don't understand the products that they're buying and the level of detail that the people that are installing them use. So if they're not really that savvy on that stuff, and you come in and wow them with how much better your products are, it's gonna go over their head. So you got to kind of relate that information so that it's understandable to them and they can comprehend it, and then they can evaluate how the other people make differences. I don't know if I answered your question about how you
You
get you like knocked
did.
over your entrenched competitor, but that's a tough
No.
one, because that's a whole nother like set of strategies. Because when somebody's been in there for a long time, this works the other way too. Like, if you were trying to get into some company, and how would you feel if they just turned their back on you and went with the next guy just because you got a phone call and a 10-cent discount? Like,
Yeah.
relationships are everything. And so I always say, like, if you want to get in on a company, you got to build that relationship within the sequence of that framework, who the purchasing agent is, who their customer is, the boss, the marketing, the end user. Evaluate that and just kind of be patient, that it takes time to develop this. But if you're there, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody always messes up and somebody always gets us another shot to come in, and if you're there, been knocking on the door for a while, they're going to call you and give you a shot. But if you just, hey, here's my literature,
Yeah.
call me when you need something, you're not going to get a call back.
No. So staying top of mind and also understanding what it is they value most. And so I'm imagining there's two things that go into that. So one, it's really the salesperson, I imagine, from that company that's interacting with purchasing, interacting with the specifier, whoever it is, the buying team, and understanding, is it time to delivery? Is it quality? Is there a co-marketing branding thing? What is it that this company values? And then I see, following that, where marketing can have a set of content that maybe sales is delivering or is delivered on the website, if it's pretty universal, that the thing that the people we target care most about is X. And so let's develop messaging around that. So I
Yeah.
think it was a really good point.
Well, that's true, because, a lot of people, when they're thinking marketing, they understand it in B2C or consumer driven relationships, where you're going to, like, oh, here's some nice artwork, or here's some nice advertisements. I'm excited about the product. Let's go buy it. But that works in like impulse decisions, and in B2B, this type of purchasing decisions aren't made impulsively. There's usually a reason for it. So the marketing literature is almost secondary. Like it's not going to be like, hey, I saw a cool Facebook ad, like I want to bring this new vendor in. The marketing should be um, it should support the relationship. So, your
Yeah.
sales force comes in and they do educational. They talk about why this product works. So the marketing message has to be on point where it's identifying the pain point, and that needs to be in alignment with the company's solution, and they need to be able to deliver on it. So if all those things are aligned with the way that the salespeople are presenting the information, then the backup marketing that goes with it, the websites, the literature, I always call it your propaganda. Those things are
Oh,
there
let's
to like
not call it that. We have savvy marketers listening to this.
yeah, so like that's where you go to the website, and that's where you want it to be easy to use, easy to
Yeah.
find the technical data, the brochures, and all this stuff, so that you can easily refer to it. Because a lot of times, if you go onto the website and you're like, I'm already in the position where I'm using the product. I need the technical data. Like, where is it? Is it easy to find? Is it located there? Is the pros and cons? And the other thing I think that's important to have on there is useful data to help the purchasing agent advocate for that company. Because if you go in there and you're going to talk to your boss about why you want to switch somebody, if you have studies or results or like perform, and the best one is like, if you say like technical jargon, scientific studies, all this stuff, that flies over a lot of people's heads. But when you can show like a video, like I'm just thinking of like something's like under compression, like a press, and one busts and one doesn't, like that's very visual, and you go, hey, that's a lot better. So something that's visual, that a purchasing agent can use as support for their argument to like, hey, why do we want to use somebody else? Why do we like this product better?
Yeah.
You go and you show it. Hey, it's outperforming the competitors because of this reason. And oh, by the way, the price point's better, or they can service us better. They got more inventory, or there's less inventory, or these two parts cost more, but they
Hmm.
cost less than the two parts individually, and little things like that all are useful for making the purchasing agent's job easier if they're going to, recommend you.
Yeah, often we'll focus on technical case studies about what a solution does, the application that it serves. But I could see there being a business case study showing how a company saved money or worked more efficiently because of this product, and it had that purchasing manager in mind when they wrote that case study. So giving the
Hmm.
business support to that purchase, not just the technical support.
Right, exactly.
Well, as far as job performance goes, how is the purchasing agent measured?
Wow, that's a tough one. The purchasing agent job it's one that you don't get a lot of kudos for doing your job. You just get a lot of grief if you didn't do it right. You got to, if you meet your budget and meet your schedule, you did your job, and it's like, hey, good job. But what you get screamed at, or people are looking for, is like, hey, why did you miss in your budgets? Why did you miss this um, specification? Why did you like not get the materials and parts and pieces on time? Like, that's the calls you get. Friday night at 5 o'clock, like, my stuff better be here on Monday morning, and you're stressed out all weekend trying to make things happening, but nobody goes, hey, thanks for getting that here a day early. Like, cheers. So the purchasing agent role is very tough. So the people that really perform well in it, I think, are detailed, organized. They're not always rushing around putting out fires. They're planning ahead. They're being proactive and figuring out what they're going to do. And they're very thorough in making sure that they don't have missed scope. There's nothing worse than going, hey, I got all the parts here. And then you find out, like, well, there's one little screw that's missing, and that screw is 12 weeks out, and you can't do anything without that screw. So it's like, why have
Wow.
anything there?
Yeah.
So you really have to be that type of person. But, the if you're basically out of sight, out of mind, I think people like that are in the business know how important that type of purchasing agent is, that they
Mm-hmm.
go, hey, we don't have a lot of problems with this person because they're so organized, everything gets there on time, everything's thorough. They get rewarded pretty well, and they move up. They tend to move up pretty quickly in the company. They go from whatever the organization's role is, but usually like contract admin to assistant purchasing agent to purchasing agent to maybe like a director of purchasing, or maybe they become very skilled in the operations side too, and they become like
Mm-hmm.
an
I could see
operations
that.
slash purchasing person that runs both sides of the shop. That tends to be at some point. Um, Everything funnels up into operations, and whoever's running that show has to have an adequate knowledge of the operations and of the purchasing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of times that person comes out of the purchasing background.
Okay. So it sounds like to help that purchasing manager perform well within the organization, vendors can deliver on time and fulfill the promises that they make, and make sure those screws or whatever it is that component is arrives when you say it'll arrive, so that
Hmm.
everyone is happy, things move along. I assume that some are probably also measured on what kind of discounts they can get. So
Yeah.
coming into that relationship knowing that there's some give and take in the contract negotiation to have a win-win would be another one.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
that's one of those things where you have to understand what's important to the company. Like some purchasing agents get a lot of kudos for the rebates they get. So if the rebate's important to them, they'll be like, hey, I need a rebate, because they want to go show like the rebate check to the boss. Like, look, I got $500 back, $5,000 back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, woohoo. But we all know that the rebate is a portion of the original sale price. So wouldn't it
Yeah.
be better to just get the lower price up front? But sometimes that doesn't get the, wow, look at the money you got back. It's just like, oh, you did a good job in negotiation. There's hard to do a define like, well, the whole thing kind of added up to a 2% savings, but how much of it was that the price, that was just the price, and how much of it was good negotiation and all this other stuff. So you do have to understand what is motivating that employee, that purchasing agent. So I suggest, like, if you're first time doing business, or even if you haven't, if you've been doing business for a long time, is go spend some time, like an hour, like if you do a lunch and learn, or you take them to lunch, or you just come in to present your materials, spend a bit of time getting to know them, like find out what is the company's pain points, what is your pain point as a purchasing agent, what are the things you're looking for, understand that complexity. Because let's face it, most people that are going to get in the door and meet with the purchasing agent, they're going to be, again, pre-qualified
Mm-hmm.
that their product's capable enough to do the thing. So like everybody comes in and says, hey, our product's so much better than this other product, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I get it. You got a couple bells and whistles this other person doesn't have. They probably got the same little few things different too. But as a whole, you guys are all pretty equal. Like, we think you're capable of fulfilling the project specifications. So really we need to solve the pain point. What's going to make the difference, and that's going to be how you solve that person's pain point. So don't go in there thinking like I'm going to wow them with the technical literature and how much better, how big, how many years we've been in business, and how long this how many stores we got, how much inventory we got. Like, the purchasing agent is going to care about a lot of different things. Are you going to deliver on time? Am I going to get a bunch of headache with bad invoicing? Am I going to deal with like shortages? Am I going to deal with like after the fact price increases? Like, those are the things that make a purchasing agent's head spin. And you go, well, can we get in business and do with you? Like, well, your accounting sucks, and your AR or AP is a nightmare to deal with. And I just don't want to
Yikes.
deal with it. So I don't
Yeah.
care if like how great your product is or how cheap it is. Like, it's a pain in the ass to deal with your company, so I'm not going to. So you really have to dig into what their pain points are and solve those, and that'll make your life so much easier to promote your product.
Okay. What about this sounds like so 80s, but what about bribes and gifts? And you mentioned lunch. Do companies ever try that? Is that still a thing?
I think that's definitely scaled back
Mm-hmm.
significantly when there's 2008, when the recession happens, and maybe even prior to that, there was like Sarbanes-Oxley with
Right,
reporting and stuff
right.
like that came in.
Mm-hmm.
So it used to be like, hey, if you took somebody to lunch, or I'd hate to think somebody's making a decision based on a lunch thing, but like, hey, I'll take you on a trip somewhere and all this stuff. Those things definitely did happen, and they probably still continue to happen to some point. But I think purchasing agents know like it's really not worth it for
Yeah.
you to kind of get into that trouble. The I think too that was back when there wasn't as much social media. It wasn't easy to connect with people like
Very good point.
digitally, like
Yeah.
email, phone call. Like I've talked to some hate to say this word, like old timers, but people have been in the industry for like 30 years, and they were
Yeah.
telling me stories like, we didn't have email back then. We didn't have phone call. We had, all I had was a phone. So what I would do is I would drive to your office and I would sit in this conference room, and the purchase once a week, and the purchasing agents would kind of rotate through and talk about all their stuff and all their needs and do this stuff. And you go, man, that sounds so archaic. So the only way you could build these relationships with people was, you'd have to get them out of the office and have a conversation with them. But I think now it's a little bit easier to converse, and it's definitely frowned upon. A lot of corporations have gifting policies of like anything over, a token amount, like
Yeah.
a t-shirt or, something like that, a hat or a coffee mug is acceptable. But I still am a believer that lunch out of the office is an important way to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
But just to take it off the table, I always pay for the lunch, because I feel like, one, I'm probably going to get more out of this lunch than they're going to, because if there's a potential to do business together, if I invest $30 in a lunch, I'm probably going to get more than $30 savings on the deal. So
Very
I
good
just kind of
point.
treat it that way, and I think my employer probably feels the same too. That's
Mm-hmm.
better than just saying, hey, look, this guy got a free lunch and now we're paying more for the product because we got to pay for their marketing budget. So
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Are there any special associations or training programs or certifications that purchasing agents go through? Like, is there the Association of Purchasing Agents or something?
well, in my industry, there's some groups, councils, and stuff like that that are related specifically to construction purchasing. But
Mm-hmm.
every organization has some sort of purchasing association, trade
Group.
shows,
Yeah.
whatever. Some
Okay.
are more formal. If you were doing manufacturing purchasing, I'm sure there's certifications and little designations you can have behind your name. And it really depends on your industry and how it's set up, but there's definitely some. So I would, if you're looking to get started, start Googling what your industry is / purchasing agent, and some stuff will pull up. You can always ask your vendors like, hey, what do you go to? Because they're always looking to network with other purchasing agents. So they're going to go where the purchasing agents are, which
Mm-hmm.
tend to be these industry groups. And they'll tell you, hey, this one's a good one, this one's not so good, hang out here. And then you meet a few other purchasing agents, ask what they're up to, what's helped them
Mm-hmm.
be successful in their career, and just kind of follow that advice.
Okay. Very good. Well, do you have any other examples of just fantastic content or communication that a company has done that's helped you make a decision in their favor? Something to give all of our marketing people?
um, I'm going to say project specific type marketing put together presentations. So when you come out with like, here's my catalog and here's my brochures and stuff like that, like it used to be, if you went to a trade show, you'd have these bags they'd give you when you walk in the show, and you'd like walk through and you'd get done and you'd have like 60 pounds of stuff, and you're like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And then
You're going to throw it all away. We know what you do with
I like, as
it.
I'm walking out the door, I'm like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
look at this again, and I would throw it away. So
Oh, the
definitely
days
don't
of
waste your,
printed lit is
yeah.
over.
So that's not really that important. But
Yeah.
what I find is when you're talking about a product or a service, and you say, hey, we're thinking about using you over here on this project. Can you put together a little bit of specifics for this so I could show my boss? So maybe um, show us what are trends in the industry, like what are your other customers doing, how are they solving these same problems? And you come out and you say, hey, this is what's kind of going on. This is stuff that you like, this is how it's been doing. This is where it's going. So you understand really the trends of what's going on and how that product fits into it. Like that's really, really helpful, I think, too, is knowing that. And then one of the things that I always find is frustrating is you have the marketing and sales staff come out and they talk about the product, and then you go, well, I have all these like technical questions, and they're like, well, we're gonna have to refer you to our technical person. And it's like, I just want to talk to like the wrong person. So bring the team that needs to be there for the answer. So when you gather up all your literature, all your stuff, which really rolls back down to what I said before, is like, what is the problem you're solving? How do you eliminate that pain point? And what the company is about, and all that message is all in alignment. Then you come in and you curtail that message to what that individual person you're meeting with is interested in. That's the best way to do it.
Excellent. So I'm envisioning, as you were talking, how you have one, let's say, PowerPoint deck that is for the engineer specifier, right? That goes into deeply technical information, specs, all of that. And then you have this other document, and there's some overlap, of course, that talks to, like you said, trends in the industry, business stability, whatever those benefits are that you think would be the selling point. And it's not as deeply technical, but it's just technical enough to show that, yes, you meet those specifications. And I think that's kind of a nice way to look at it, is these companion, whether it's PowerPoint at the end of the day or web pages or whatever, maybe that's the difference there too. So
Yes, for sure. And
good.
the other thing I would recommend is be okay with getting off the script.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a lot of times the sales marketing team comes in and they got this script and they're like going through it, and you're like, like stop. Like you don't have to pitch this
Let's just
portion of
talk.
it. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
just talk. We've already said we're I don't need to know about the company history. We've already passed that. We've already passed the like why we should use you. We're in the point where it's like, hey, let's get to the nuts and bolts, and you're in the running for it. Let's talk about that. So be willing to go off script. Don't stick to like the guns. And one thing that I'll tell people, you think it would be easy common knowledge, but when you get to yes, shut up. Like sometimes people get yes and they
That's
keep
great
talking and they
advice.
keep talking and they could
Stop.
talk their yes into a no. If you get to the
Yeah.
yes, even if it's 5 minutes in and you had an hour meeting, just, hey, cool, meeting's over. Like,
Excellent.
what are you doing? You going fishing this weekend? What's up?
Perfect. Perfect. Oh, well, this has all been very interesting. Exactly what I hope to accomplish today, to get in your head as a purchasing agent. And I think it's motivating me on how we can think about this persona a little bit more critically.
Yes, it
Uh,
was so awesome chatting with you.
yeah. Well, before we hop off, I would love to talk a little bit about your podcast, which is called
Okay.
the All In Podcast.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So the All In podcast is an extension of an experiment I thought about doing this year, which it had a little bit of legs in the past. And it started off with, I was in my career in purchasing, I hated networking and I didn't like doing it. And so I would avoid these networking events, but people were like, hey, you got to go, you got to, you can't, what they say, no person is an island. You have to go out and meet people or you're not going to be able to grow your career. So I started doing it, and I did a lot of what everybody does, is just hang out with a select few people that and that they see at the same things. And I didn't really venture out. But then my job required me to meet a bunch more people that were outside this immediate circle of influence. And so I started doing that. And as uncomfortable as it was, it became easier and easier. And I also found out that my ability to do my job got better, because basically what it is your network is like a tool chest of resources to solve problems. And the more problems you can solve, the more valuable you are. And you start realizing, hey, I'm doing better with, being able to pour for more people to solve more problems. Like, let me go into the national space. Like, instead of being the localized industry, let me go national. Again, it just accelerated, I think, my career path, not just because I knew a bunch of people, but like I said, I was able to solve more problems. So I just over the last year said, hey, what would really happen if you just put in all your efforts into growing your personal relationship as big as you can, knowing that you have no idea what's going to happen, but you're going to meet amazing people along the way, and just kind of document on the process. And the podcast is an extension of that, this idea of like, hey, instead of me always going out trying to find people, it's a place for people to kind of come find me. So you could either come on as a guest, and I could talk with people I might not have had a chance to meet with before, or I could get my message to other people that might not have heard it. And so I was just like, hey, I'm going to do this. So the podcast is kind of like a conversation of like what it would be like if we went and said, hey, let's chat, let's get to know each other, let's go grab a coffee, talk about what's kind of going on, what are the things that are important to you, and just what are you about, and document that. Because I always thought whenever I'd go meet with somebody for a coffee or a cocktail after work, it was like, those are really cool conversations, and I wish they had been recorded, because I think there's a few nuggets of value that I think people would find just that kind of came out of this get to know you meeting. So that's really it in a nutshell, the podcast.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I've listened to some of your episodes and I found it very both entertaining and got some inspiration from it. So
Awesome.
you're doing
Appreciate you
something
listening.
right. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your podcast?
Okay, so my website, natepeo.com, is like the central hub for everything. You can find all my social media links, but LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on there. I like connecting with people on LinkedIn. And so I'll just put this out there. If anybody that's on the sales and marketing side just wants to, pick my brain about, hey, how could we do basically, how could I get a buyer's perspective on the sales process? I'd be happy to connect with them for a few minutes and just, tell them what I think. And, we could be just generic advice questions, or you could say, I have a specific problem with this person. Like, what can we do to figure it out? Like, I love those conversations, and that's a ton of fun. It's like a hobby. That's if somebody's like, what's your hobby? It's like this. Like, why would that be a hobby? That's so weird, but I love it. So.
You're a people person.
There you go.
Well, any parting words of advice for the marketers listening?
Um, Again, I think there's the marketing of presenting your company in alignment of the vision, but I think the relationships are so important to create. You want to make sure that each one's individualized, and really people like talking about themselves first. So make it about them. Don't just lead with, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do, this is why we're so great. Like it's going to go, you're going to develop better, stronger relationships faster when you go in, hey, who are you, what are you doing, what is your problem? And sometimes that problem might just be like, I just had a bad day and I needed a coffee, like that's it. Like and those conversations turn into like, that person was really just very empathetic, they didn't try to jam me down my throat with a bunch of stuff, and I liked meeting them. And so then the next time you call there, it'll be like, hey, I like talking to that person, I'm gonna take their call. And then it'll turn into a bigger friendship. The other thing, I don't know if you tell your clients this or your marketers this, but podcasting is something I would recommend people do, because if you want to get in with like like let's say you're trying to get in at some company, and the purchasing agent won't return your calls. If you're having a podcast and you called this person's CEO and you said, hey, I do a podcast on this industry you're in, would you come and share your wisdom and knowledge, blah, 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 they're going to come and chat with you. They'll be more likely to chat with you because the CEO came out and he's like, hey, I'm having this conversation, it's a podcast, I'm promoting the business. And then at the end of the show, there's always a little chit chat, and like, oh, what are you doing? Like, hey, we're interested in bidding your stuff. So then the CEO might say, oh, I'll introduce you to the PA, or I'll tell the PA to take your call. And then the PA gets a call from the CEO, like, hey, meet with this person. Then they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to take the call because the CEO asked me to. Like, there's a lot of benefit from just having your own podcast, and it's a chance to set yourself apart from the expectations. Sure, it's work. Sure, you might not get a lot of immediate, like, tangible numbers that just pinpoint to it, but you're able to have conversations again with people you might not have had otherwise, because you have a podcast, and it's a chance for you to you have a reason to call somebody that's about them, not for you. So it's an amazing tool.
Great advice. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Nate.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Visit contentmarketingengineer.com for notes and resources from today's episode. While there, you can subscribe to my blog, which will keep you up to date on new episodes and other resources for building trust and growing your business with technical content. Thanks and have a great day.